If I miss something,
that needs to be in the opening paragraph. So what do you need to include in every introductory paragraph for APUSH? This is LEQ and DBQ. There's 2 points you're going to get in that intro paragraph. Thesis?
introduction.
No. Nope, it's there. It's a point on the thesis or a point on the rubric on the DBQ and LEQ, and that is contextualization. We're going to do contextualization today, and we're going to look at those thesis statements today. So contextualization and thesis, that's always in the introductory paragraph of an LEQ or DBQ. You want to get 2 points in that introductory paragraph. 2 points. All right. Okay. So, here we go. Anybody come down from the tech center between second and third block? No. Looks like it's really hot out because the sun's out now. It was hard to breathe yesterday whenever I got home. It was just so muggy and hot and awful. Okay, so here we go. The Second Continental Congress. So yesterday, we talked about the road to revolution. And there were a lot of things that we listed, a lot of things that were happening with taxes and different laws that the British were imposing on the American colonists. And then there was actual violence. We had the Boston Massacre, but then an actual battle between American militia and British soldiers. And that was at Lexington and Concord, that first battle in 1775. The Second Continental Congress will meet in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is the exact room in which they met. You can visit it today. It is part of the National Park Service. And you can tour the building. And this is the most famous painting of the meeting of the Continental Congress, where Thomas Jefferson here in the middle is turning in his Declaration of Independence.
Where did you say that?
Philadelphia. So at first, when these delegates show up, they are not looking, most of them are not looking for independence. There are a handful that are, and that handful includes John Adams and Ben Franklin. They were really the two instigators. Most of them wanted just to, write to the king, write to Parliament, let them know what we are upset about, and maybe make some compromises and negotiate. This is going to be known as the Olive Branch Petition. An olive branch is like a symbol from like the old ancient days of peace. If you extend an olive branch, that means you want peace. So we call this the Olive Branch Petition because we don't want war, we want peace with Great Britain. However, while our guys are meeting in Philadelphia, the British are sending warships to North America. They are sending more troops to North America, and they are preparing for more fighting and even a war. So maybe we ought to be preparing for that too. George Washington is going to be named the head of the colonial militia. And we also formally declare our independence. And Those are the highlights of that Philadelphia meeting in 1776. Now, like I said, if you have to point to somebody at this meeting that is the driver behind the independence movement, it's not Thomas Jefferson. He writes the document because he was better liked than John Adams. He had more skills at writing and persuasion than John Adams and even Ben Franklin. So he was asked to write the Declaration of Independence, but John Adams and Ben Franklin are really kind of the pushers for independence. This was published that same year. We have Thomas Paine's Common Sense. And Thomas Paine is making an argument to the American colonists why independence should happen. The Declaration of Independence is an argument to the British Parliament and to the British King. Common Sense is written by Thomas Paine, and he is trying to convince more Americans to join the independence cause. Because most Americans did not support independence. Whenever we were, in the depths of war, the most Americans that ever supported the independence movement was about a third. You had a third that wanted to stay loyal to England. You had a third that supported absolute independence. And you had a third that would go either way, depending on, how this kind of shakes out at the end. A little apathetic, because, well, either this government's going to tell me what to do and tax me, or this government's going to tell me what to do and tax me. What difference does it make? George Washington, a little bit more about him because, he's kind of an important dude. He is chosen as the leader of the American Army. After we declare independence, we become an American Army instead of just militia. So he's commander of the United States Army. He's picked because he has leadership. He is one of the few colonials that had a high-ranking position within the British Army at one time. He has shown his courage in battle, and everybody that knows him knows that he is really kind of a righteous guy. He has a very strong moral compass. Now, he was a slave owner, right? So how good is that moral compass? He was a man of his time, and but he really had this this deep sense of this is right, and I don't care what happens to me. I got to do what's right. This says little military experience. It's true. Compared to the British officers, every American had little military experience. George Washington had the most in all of America. But it still wasn't that much. And the officers beneath him, they had less. So George Washington is the best we can do. Now, he's also chosen because of who he is and where he's from. Who he is one of the richest men in the colonies. Now, the United States, after the Declaration of Independence. And he got that way because he married a very, very rich widow. He was born into some wealth. He inherited land. He had a profession, but he was by no means independently wealthy. He became one of the wealthiest men in all of the colonies whenever he married Martha Custis, who became wealthy because her first husband died. And she was able to inherit his wealth, and then Washington took it when he married Martha. Also, he is from Virginia. The There was tons of support for independence in Massachusetts and the New England colonies. Not a whole lot of support for independence in the South, so they thought a commander from the South would be good. Plus, Virginia is the oldest colony. It's also the most populous colony, so that's another good reason to pick George Washington. Some other highlight leaders. Anastasia, I think Miss JJ's here if you want to go talk to her. Hey. So we have Alexander Hamilton. And Alexander Hamilton, I like to call him Washington's go-to guy. If he had something that had to get done, if Washington thought that, ooh, this is a really big ask. Ooh, I don't know. Okay, Alexander Hamilton, you're up. He was absolutely Washington's go-to guy. He proved his bravery and just his let's do this attitude twice in the war where he should have been killed. The first one is against the Hessians. Y'all know about the whole story about Washington crossing the Delaware, and it's on like the night of Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. It's around Christmas, right? And Washington is going to sneak up and surprise the Hessians, who are German soldiers that the British are paying to fight against us. And everybody's scared of the Hessians because the Hessians are like giant men. This German, we say Germany nowadays, back then it was Prussia. These Prussian soldiers were almost bred to be soldiers. I mean, the King of Prussia would go out and kidnap people from their homes if, as a young teenager, you were already this tall and you had a full bushy head of hair. I mean, they were intimidating guys. And the Hessian troops had reputation around the world of being fearless and mean, and they will kill you. So, George Washington has this plan. I want to attack the Hessians. And so he crosses the Delaware, and his army is ready to move into the Hessian camp that they have in this little town. But there's a couple of lookout posts. And you have scouts, Hessian scouts, in these lookout buildings, little small shacks. And you got to take out the lookouts so they don't warn the main camp. And so Washington sends a scout. He was like, okay, there's 4 Hessians in this little shack right here. They're all asleep, but there's 4 of them. What do you want to do? And Washington told Alexander Hamilton, all right, you need to go in there and you need to kill them, but you can't shoot them. You have to do it quietly because we don't want any gunshots, because that will alert the big camp, and then we no longer have surprise. And Hamilton said, sure, okay, let's go. And he did it. At Yorktown, the decisive battle in the whole war, if we take this last little outpost where the British are, we could surround the town and lay siege to it. And he sent Hamilton up over out of his little dugout to attack the French dugout. And Hamilton was like, let's do this. He's a really impressive guy. And of course, he's going to get shot and killed in a duel by the vice president later on. But, good in the revolution. Way to go, Alexander Hamilton. We'll talk more about him later. Now, on the flip side, you got this jerk. You got Benedict Arnold. He was initially a hero in the war. He was General Benedict Arnold. He won some battles. But he is not getting all the press and all the celebrations and all the congratulation letters from George Washington he thinks he deserves. Particularly after the Battle of Saratoga, which actually, if you have to point to a battle saying this is the turning point, before this the British were winning, after this Americans winning, it's that battle at Saratoga. But Benedict Arnold, who was a commanding general at Saratoga, helped win that victory. He wanted to be promoted and celebrated, but he was not. So he starts confiding with the British. He turns traitor, and he will sell secrets to the British, eventually take over West Point for the British, and he's the #1 traitor in the American army. And then lastly, Lafayette, who is a Frenchman. And he is probably the big reason why the French will come to help the Americans in our fight against the British. The French and the British, you know, they were fighting against each other in the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War, France versus England. France and England had been kind of rivals for a long time, enemies for a long time. And we were really hoping the French would help us beat the British. And Lafayette will help in that. He also is a soldier on the field, and he is quite heroic as well. In fact, it is Hamilton and Lafayette together in Yorktown who take those last of those English positions. And we surround Yorktown. The British surrender, and that's the last main battle of the war. So Lafayette, and by the way, Lafayette was like, I think 19 when the war started. Dude was just a kid. Yeah, I mean, he looks like a kid, doesn't he? I mean, he has a wig on, right, with gray. The wig's painted gray. So it looks like, is he on that? But his face looks like he could be a 12-year-old kid. And he was a kid when this war starts. And a favorite of Washington. Washington kind of treats him like the son he never had. No, Martha had children from her first marriage, and Washington kind of adopted them, but no, he never had children. All right, so here we go. So when the war is on, you can see the different sides. If it is pink, like here, down here in Charleston and Savannah, these are loyalist strongholds, meaning they are loyal to Great Britain. So you have pockets down here, also around New York. Indians are, of course, native territory. Purple, strongly contested areas, meaning that it could go either way. And the green is patriot strongholds. So the patriots were able to win those areas. All right, as I mentioned before, the Battle of Yorktown is the decisive battle of the war. It is the last main battle when the British surrender at Yorktown. It takes a few years to get the treaty in place and for war to be officially over, because Yorktown happens in 1781, I want to say. But this is the last major battle. The British start talking peace after that. So Treaty of Paris, 1783, it officially ends the war, and the British officially grant recognition to the United States of America. So, last little look here. This is what changes. The British keep control of Canada. There are a couple of spots where it kind of bleeds into what's now the United States. This part of what's now Maine was contested. This little chunk right here, the British maintained what's now Minnesota. And the United States of America were all yellow. So Georgia up to Maine, from the Atlantic to the Mississippi River, this part right here, us and the Spanish are going to be both claiming that. So everything that is yellow becomes the United States of America as a result of the Treaty of Paris, 1783. Now, what other Treaty of Paris have we already talked about?
The Treaty of Paris.
63.
63, that ends the French and Indian War. So we need to make sure that if we ever include and answer Treaty of Paris, either know the date or specify which war it ended, right? Because obviously.
Why do they go to Paris?
Paris, because it's Paris. Why would you not go to Paris? That's a better question, right? Treaty of Paris. I mean, even the treaty that ends World War I, it's the Treaty of Versailles, which is like, 30 miles outside of Paris, So, yeah. Why would you not go to Paris
Fair.
if you could? Okay, we're gonna save that until Friday. Okay, so first, I wanna make sure we get in an SAQ practice. Because we need to make sure we understand how to answer these properly, because this is a quarter of your test grade tomorrow. The SAQ.
You washed your hands. You still can smell it?
Yep.
Smell what? Pumpkin spice. Do you like pumpkin spice?
All right.
Do you like some
So
pumpkin
you can
spice?
see this
No.
is from the 2018 AP test. So
Oh, pretty recent.
this is as legit as it comes. And I picked this one because it's something we already know. And this is kind of the format that you will see tomorrow. Wait, first, oh yeah, okay. So there is no document, right?
Right.
But you are given a time frame, and you have to answer the A and the B and the C. And on the test tomorrow, there is no document, but you have to answer the A and the B and the C. And it's the same sort of format. You have to describe one difference between this and that, one similarity between this and that, and then tomorrow it's one reason for the difference between this and that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now it will not be what is the difference between the role of religion in Spanish colonies and colonies in New England. You have a different topic to write about, but it's the same sort of format. Give me a difference between this and that, give me a similarity between this and that, and then give me a reason for that difference. All right, so let's spend about 10 minutes, and you can talk to a friend, and you should talk to a friend about how we are going to answer this, okay? In fact, I would like to do, let's do this side of the room, where I'm at over here, this side of the room. I think the time period is 1607 to 1763. So, here, let's get going. So, A, briefly describe one specific historical difference between the role of religion. And this is kind of a big deal too. Role of religion. Not what religion, right? The role of the religion in Spanish colonization and the colonization of New England. So, A and B were over here, right? So, Brayden, let's start with your people.
The Spanish sought to convert natives to Christ. The Puritans sought freedom from religious persecution. However, the Spanish goal was not religious based, whereas the New English was.
Alright, so the Spanish convert or die. New England was to escape persecution. And that's your A, that's your answer to the question for, we are doing this acronym here. So you have a direct answer to the question. This is, and actually I think you kind of did this as well in that same part. Read it one more time.
The Spanish sought to convert natives to Christ. The Puritans sought freedom from religious persecution. However, the Spanish goal was not religious based, whereas the New English was.
Okay, so, not religious based, what was the purpose of the Spanish colonization if it wasn't religious based? Okay, I probably would have included that, okay? So the role of religion was secondary to the Spanish. Their primary purpose and motive or for colonization was profit. I like it. You did enough to earn the point because this is either thumbs up or thumbs down. You don't get a half a point. You don't get 3/4 of a point. This is worth a point, this is worth a point, this is worth a point. These are worth 3 points. You either get A or you don't get A. He told me enough about the role of religion. I know that he knows the difference between what the Spanish were doing and what the English were doing. Did you name the Puritans here? Yeah. So that would be specific evidence. And whenever you talk about this is their primary purpose, that's your explanation. If you would have done it here, it would have been sing to the angels, perfect. But what you did was good enough for the point. Corbin, do y'all have something that's different, similar?
I just erased it, but
Okay.
Spanish, I put some like Spanish conquistadors strive to force their religion on the natives, whereas New England colonists didn't think the natives were pure enough to something about their God, like follow.
Yes, and I remember reading a document about that, right? We read a document about how John Winthrop said, I don't think they're ready for this yet. So that's absolutely true. So, and I like that you use Spanish conquistadors, right? Because that goes to kind of what Braden was talking about. The purpose wasn't necessarily religious. They were there to conquer territory, to win land, right? And that's kind of implied with your conquistadors. I would have wished you, because I heard one sentence, right?
Yeah, that I didn't like get to it.
Oh, okay, do you want to keep on going? But you didn't have time to get to the rest. Okay. So, yes, so I think that is a really good start. Really good start, especially naming conquistadors, because the more vocabulary you can put into this, the better. Because the person grading this, and tomorrow obviously it's going to be me, but this summer with the AP test, it might be a college professor from Harvard, or it might be a history teacher from Florida public schools. You know, it's a crapshoot who reads your test, but it's either college professors or other APUSH teachers. And they read these quickly, and if they got a sense of, oh yeah, this kid knows what they're doing. And I know if you know what you're doing, if you're using vocabulary properly, and you can cite examples and connect it. Okay? Alright, well let's move on to B. Describe one specific historical similarity. So it's all the same, but this time we got a similarity. Elston, what did you do with this? Mr. Rodder?
I have one sentence.
Okay, well, what do you have for your one sentence? For B.
This. Okay, maybe I don't have one sentence.
Okay. Ayla, do you have anything with B?
I didn't get done writing, but we put religion was the center of lawmaking and life within both Spanish and New England colonies. So
Okay.
talking about like
I had like,
Yeah.
I had something similar. I had religion defined laws and the way of life in both Spanish colonization and the colonization of New England. And then I also put, this is seen in John Winthrop, City on a Hill, and the idea of God going forward.
Okay. All right, I like this. So we got, religion, religion is life. Yes, religion is, contained, in the laws of the colonies. You provide evidence with City on a Hill.
Would God going and glory fit in the time period?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Valeria also did B, right?
Yes.
What do you have?
I said in both Spain and New England, colonists tried to convert natives to their respective religions. For example, in Spanish colonies, Catholicism was required for all in the community. Although New England did not have native slaves, people such as Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams wanted to spread their religion.
Okay, I like that. And I really like that because of all of the examples, right? Anne Hutchinson, Roger Williams, they will talk to the natives about their faith. They're not going to force conversion. The Spanish did. So it's still about spreading the faith, but not, you know, it's not convert or die, but it's still about spreading the faith. I would take that. Did you use the word Puritans for New England?
No.
Okay, that would be my critique there. That's good enough for the point. But that would be what I would have wanted to see besides that, is you name the Catholics in Spain, you name the Puritans in New England. Alright, so last one specific historical effect. On the development of society. And you can pick one or the other, Spain or New England. Caitlin, what did y'all decide on?
Okay, we didn't really get like that far into it.
Do mine.
Okay,
We technically did the same.
Okay. The belief that New England settlers are chosen by God to worship their religion united their society. And then a good example would be a City on a Hill, where he urges the society to unite, to do, to worship God and build a perfect society.
okay. So historical effect is you have a community built on religious rules, religion or religious rules. Your example is City on a Hill. Did you name Winthrop?
Yeah.
That'd be good. I like that a lot. So this idea of community over individualism for profit, particularly if I combine Braden's part A with your part C, because Braden talked about how the Spanish colonization was all about profit, right? That would fit so nicely together. Yeah? Instead of individual profit-finding goal, you're going to have a community built on religious values. And with Winthrop and City on the Hill. We have to look up here, it would just be easier for us to point to what we're looking at. So let's start this top one, JC, Ayla, and Corbin. First, let's remind ourselves of the question. Let's see. question is, evaluate the extent to which the 7 Years' War marked a turning point in American relations with Great Britain. All right, the 7 Years' War marked an enormous turning point. Very good. Tells me how much. In American relations with Great Britain due to increased taxation. That's an answer. Restrictions on the colony. And developing unity in North America. All right, we're going to vote like they did in Roman times at the Colosseum, where the Christians were in the pit with the lions. Thumbs up. If you live, thumbs down. They die. So, do we get the point for a thesis? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Absolutely thumbs up. This is a good thesis. It's not as long as the next one, and it doesn't have to be. It does what it's supposed to do. It directly answers the question and kind of outlines what the answer is going to be. She has stated the argument of it's a big turning point because of this. And then she's going to have I say she, in Corbin, the she's and Corbin are going to probably have one long body paragraph, right? Because we're only spending about 25 minutes on this. This isn't a 5-paragraph essay. The thesis maybe makes it look like that, but it's not. You're going to have your introductory paragraph, and this will be the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. You're going to have a large body where you provide specific evidence for each of these, using lots of vocabulary words and proper nouns, and then a conclusion. Okay, good job. All right. Ryder, you're on the spot, buddy.
I believe I misunderstood yesterday, because I wrote more than a thesis on that.
Oh, okay, well, let's see if we can find a thesis, and if it's thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, excellent. The 7 Years' War marked a major turning point. So far, so good. This is by putting the idea of we don't need those bloody redcoats in 1,000 Americans' minds. It's like they came over and had left us here, and then randomly decided we're going to take some of this is a lot. And then randomly decided. All right, so this right here. Give me 2 words that sums up that idea that's in brackets. 2 words, that's vocabulary.
Solitary.
Yep. All right, the 7 Years' War marked a major turning point in American history. This is by, and then I like this because we had the end of salutary neglect. Sparked the explosion of the American Revolution. I like this ending right here. If this was more concise, yeah. I got it, yeah, and I understand. This is the first time we're doing it. That's why we're doing this. So we can see what it looks like, and we'll do the right thing tomorrow. The 7-Year War marked a major turning point in American history. This is by putting the idea of, let's say, independence, right? Into 1,000 colonial Americans' minds. How about independence is common sense, right? That way you, yes, referring to that by Thomas Paine, and you can talk about that. And the end of salutary neglect, and then this helps strike the spark. That's what I would condense it down to. Because whenever I read this, by the time I got to this, I would have put a 0 in the thesis category.
Yeah.
But if you just, condense it down, we got it. All right. Braden Isaiah, you're on the hot seat. 7 Years' War marked a major turning point in American relations with Great Britain. Major turning point. Due to the increase of taxes, increased restriction on settlement, and an increase in American nationalism. What do we think?
That's very good.
I like it too.
I am big about American nationalism.
That's a good one, isn't it? Yeah. What's going to be some specific evidence that you're going to use with American nationalism?
Stand back Congress.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. I like it. Good job.
Could you also use like the House of Jesus, or however you say?
Yeah, House of Burgesses.
That is a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one too,
Because that was our
because it's stated by Congress in the time frame. 1765. I don't remember if it is or not. Honestly, I would have to look it up. But yeah, so colonial legislatures, or even what was before Stand Back Congress.
I don't remember that name.
Like supervision,
How
like they're
about
in their
Albany
space.
Congress?
Could you put,
So we'll
British.
check our dates on that. Check your dates on Albany Congress.
Should we do straight?
With the Albany Plan of Union,
Yeah.
and then the Stand Back Congress. And use one of the two that did. Well,
the Albany
I don't
one?
know.
Oh yes,
You can use it.
Yeah.
You can use it.
Should
You
we
can
say
use
So, yeah.
creating, like
Yeah.
comma creating,
I would use Albany.
creating
I would
opposition,
use
creating opposition.
What's
Yeah.
the, like, the township acts and stuff like that?
Well, we're looking, you see, things after the French and Indian War would be hard to say that I don't know. Yes, it is, it works. I'm getting, because we gotta do this before and after, right? So, the French and Indian War. The war is between 1754 and 1763. So we have to say it's like this before, right? And it's like that afterwards. This was the turning point. So the national unity. I like this. American nationalism. Before, you had single colonial legislatures, like the House of Burgesses just taking care of Virginia. Yeah? But because of this war, you start seeing the colonies coming together, first with the Albany Plan of Union, and then after the Stand Back Congress. So that brings in this idea of American national unity, or this sense of we are Americans, not just Virginians. Yeah? I like it. So I know what you're doing here, and I know what you're doing here. Okay. Elston, you're on the hot seat. 7 Years' War was the start of major turning point relations with Great Britain. This is because salutary neglect ended. The line is 1763. So you're giving me two good reasons. And started severing relations, that doesn't limit you to just the proclamation, right? The proclamation line 1763. That was the first thing in this whole list of things that we talked about yesterday, right? So you could mention the standback, you could mention that other stuff, because in your outline, you're just, this is what kind of kicked it off with the sour relations.
I was just thinking about from the video that was explaining how there are like a bunch of things, I just thought,
Yeah.
where's the start?
Yes, so we have, when salutary neglect ended, we start this, as Thomas Jefferson said, a long train of abuses, right? All right, how do we feel about these thesis statements? You can use any of these. Clean this one up, but we know how to use it. But yeah. And this tells you what you're going to include in that big body, right? You just have to insert that specific evidence in how it was like this at the beginning, but after the war it's like this, right? Because it's a turning point. It used to be this way, turning point, or now it's that way. Okay? So, increased taxation, several people mentioned that. Increased taxation. Before the war, we paid almost no tax to Great Britain itself. Most of our taxes went to the colonial governments. We were the least taxed British citizens in the whole British Empire. But after the war, you can mention all those taxes. And why did they start taxing us?
Because the war was expensive.
So much money. Don't
And they
forget
were
that
rich.
part. Yes, don't forget that part. Why did they start doing this? All right, how do we feel about this? Okay, so as long as you got a good thesis with this outline built in, and again, this is the unity in North America and this American nationalism, I really like those ideas. Those were good. As long as you have a good thesis, I mean, you just kind of gotta fill in the details in that body, in that big body paragraph. Okay? The more vocab, proper nouns you can use, the better. All right, last thing we're going to talk about today is contextualization. Anybody else want me to look at their thesis statement and critique it? Because I'll be happy to. Because we got plenty of time.
Can you?
These poor people over here, they got picked on relentlessly, and I'm leaving y'all off the hook. So let's look at y'all too. Where am I at? How am I doing? Why am I not scrolling? Here we go. Now I've got to erase all this.
She doesn't like copy and copy.
I think this is the one I wrote. The one that spans these 2 pages. So if you want to look at it, I included the second sentence because on the rubric, that complexity point talks about expanding the argument and bringing in oppositional evidence.
Okay.
So it wasn't that huge of a turning point. There was continuity in the relationship, meaning the relationship didn't change, right? Because most American colonists did not support the independence movement. Now, do you have to do that in your thesis? You do not have to do that in your thesis. All those up there that we looked at, they get the point. You get 1 point for a thesis. You get there's 6 points total, you get 1 point for the thesis. All the ones we looked at, you earn the point. I just included that to remind you that there is a complexity point we would like to get. It's at the bottom of the rubric. And you have to do certain things showing that you get the big picture. You see the other side as well. All right, move it on down. Go ahead.
Would that sentence be something you put in the conclusion?
Yes, that's usually where I would suggest going for that complexity point. I would start that last paragraph with that oppositional evidence, and then bring it back to your thesis and end with that thesis, right? Because you want to hammer home your argument. All right, here we go. Anybody want to claim this one? Oh, that was mine. Sorry. I'll claim it. Okay, here we go. Selena, the 7 Years' War marked a major turning point in the relationship between Great Britain. Major turning point, good. Due to the imposed taxes, settlement restrictions, and strict supervisions enforced by the British, which created opposition from the colonists. I like this. Tell me more about what are we using for specific evidence here? Strict supervisions.
That's when like the British sent more of the, what are they called, the redcoats?
The red
Redcoats over to Boston?
Yes. Okay, all right, very good. So the British sent more and more troops as the Sons of Liberty became more active. And this will even kick off the Boston Massacre because that was a reaction to the more troops coming in. There was 1 redcoat for every 4 Bostonians. Okay, so how vocabulary rich was that? That was a lot. Sons of Liberty, yeah. Boston Massacre, they mentioned the Quartering Act. So we gotta know the vocab, all right? Whenever it says specific evidence, that's what we're looking at.
Would like.
All right, Anastasia, Caitlin, Jaden, the 7 Years' War marked a major turning point in American relations with Great Britain because of broken promises of land extension. I like that, I know what you're talking about there. Increasing limitations by imposing more taxes and decreasing freedom for the colonists, which led to disputes. All right, tell me more about this.
So, end of solitary neglect, where they canceled the freedom for the colonists.
Sure. Minding their, yes, colonists
That's
running their own
example.
business, smuggling as
Yeah.
much as they wanted to without any sort of consequence, really.
Solitary neglect, that was like before.
Yes, salutary neglect was them leaving us alone before the war. And then obviously the war is a turning point because they need money, yeah? So it's the end of salutary neglect after, because they're gonna stop the smuggling so they can collect taxes on the imports and things like that. Yeah, salutary neglect is a really good answer to this question because it is really the big picture, right? Salutary neglect before, after, here come the taxes, here come the laws, here come the redcoats. Alright. Okay, let's look at the other point we have to get in paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 is contextualization as well. Contextualization. And let's talk about what we're going to do to contextualize. Do I have the question at the top of this page?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. All right. So, here we go. So, contextualization puts the question in a broader context. There's several ways you can earn this point. Number 1 is you can take the focus of this question, how this war was a big turning point, and then look not just at this war, but bigger picture of what's happening nationally or globally. That's tough. Sometimes it works well with other questions. I don't think it works well with this one. So the other way you can get this contextualization point is to set the stage, meaning take the focus of the question, which is the 7 Years' War, which is this time period right here, and then back it up and talk about what is happening and kind of what got us into this situation to begin with. All right. So, French and Indian War. So we're gonna take our timeline, 54 minutes starts, so we're gonna back it up a bit. We're gonna look previous to that. What brought us to that point of going to war against the French and the Indians?
The French were like trying to get closer to the colonies.
Okay, so there was disputed territory. And that was between the French and the English. Do you remember specifically where?
The Ohio River Valley.
But also between the other people were fighting, the Indians and us.
We were fighting with the Indians because they were with the French.
Because we wanted to expand new settlements
Yeah, on
and
their-
go out west on Indian land.
Didn't we also fight for
That's why
the
Marco loves it
Appalachian
so much.
Mountains?
It was a mix.
That was the.
Yeah.
That's where the rock-
And he talks about Ohio walk.
I don't know.
Ohio.
You could only settle.
Say Ohio.
All right, so we know this, right? And who kind of kicked this all off?
George Washington.
All right.
Because his-
Again, remember, the more you can say, the more likely are specific evidence, proper nouns, vocabs. Notice all these capital letters, proper nouns. Now, okay, so we know about this part. That kind of kicks off the French and Indian War. But can you disputed territory between the Indians and the English? Jaden mentioned correctly that the English settlers are always pushing further and further to the frontier, further and further west, encountering Indians more and more. Is there a specific piece of evidence, an event that we can point to? Encounters between the Indians and the English colonists that maybe caused a ruckus. Oh, that's going way back. Yeah. It wouldn't be. The massacre with Opie Canoe.
Yeah. What about Anne Hutchinson when she got killed in?
Oh yeah, Anne Hutchinson moving into around what's now New York City. Okay. So we had Anne Hutchinson. We got please don't. Oh, I don't know. I was thinking of this. Y'all remember this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was.
Because that was, English frontiersmen wanting to take more land from the Indians, right? So, this is the big answer, right? And then details. So when we're talking about contextualization, we are just kind of setting the stage for that event that is being talked about, okay? So, this is a little format I like to do, the 411. This is your introductory paragraph. You give me 4 sentences of contextualization. It says specifically in the rubric, has to be multiple sentences. It has to provide specific information, okay? So we're looking at like 4 sentences for contextualization, one sentence to maybe transition to this thesis statement. And then your thesis statement, it can be multiple sentences, no more than 3, because the reader will get lost. But one sentence for a thesis statement, 2 sentences for a thesis statement is fine. 3, you're pushing your luck. You know what I'm saying? It might get too messy for the reader to follow. All right, so if I was starting this, I would start with that right there. So American relations with Great Britain and other nations on the North American continent was always stressed because of disputed territory. Alright? So, or you could say the American colonists and other nations in North America were fighting over similar territory since colonization started. So we're getting to the idea that Americans, I say Americans, we're British at the time, but we're just going to say Americans. The British living in America were in continual disputes with other nations, including Indians, over territory. The English Americans and the, actually I wouldn't start here because this actually leads well into our thesis. First, the English were in dispute with the Indian nations over territories. Give a specific example, and then go to France. Give some examples of what we were fighting with the French over with the Ohio River Valley and what George might be doing. And then the one would be this conflict in the Ohio River Valley leads to the French and Indian War, or leads to the 7 Years' War. And then your thesis. The 7 Years' War marks a major turning point in the relationship between America and Great Britain because. So just kind of set the stage for the topic of the question, which in this case, the topic of the question is this changing relationship. But the focus, the time period focus, is the 7 Years' War. So we need to set that up. How are we doing on time? Got 10 minutes. Let's take a look at what may be a good example here. All right. On our document that we have there, I want you to go down to the bottom, and I want you to put in a number between 1 and 10. 1 being you are as lost as an Easter egg. 10 is I totally get this contextualization. I know exactly how I'm going to do this tomorrow. So on a scale of 1 to 10, y'all got the thesis statement. But give me a scale of 1 to 10 on this contextualization.
Should we put our names?
You don't have to.
I feel like there's 5.
I just like.
Well, 5's better than 2.
Like, oh.
I was looking like busy.
The kids are right in front of you.
Alright, so y'all can see what your classmates put.
Yeah.
I think that, out of all of the rubric points, complexity is hard to get. Contextualization, so says the scores on the AP exam in the summer. Contextualization is the next hardest point to get, because folks don't understand how to do it. My best piece of advice of how to do contextualization to where you will get a point for it is to take that main topic of the question, back it up a bit, and set the stage for it. What's going on to make this thing happen? Okay? Americans want to keep pushing out west. Jaden's absolutely right. Because of this, it's going to create conflicts with Indians. It's going to create conflict with the French. We need 4 sentences, right? What I just said, it might be 1 sentence. So you got 3 sentences left to give me some specifics about conflicts with the Indians and conflicts with the French. Yeah? Transition sentence that will lead nicely into your thesis. And if you end with this, with the context, right? This leads into you can lead into your thesis really well with this. The conflict in the Ohio River Valley eventually escalates into the 7 Years' War. And then you'll just write your thesis as you have planned. Okay? So, how we doing? We're gonna do this. It's gonna be great. All right. So you got 11 multiple choice questions. They're the most valuable on the test. You got 1 SAQ to do on the test, and you got this LEQ. And you ought to come to class tomorrow with, a really good outline of how you're going to answer this LEQ, right? You can work on this as much as you want to, or as little as you want to.
Can you kind of restate what's good?
Oh, conclusion. So in your conclusion, if you want to try for that complexity point, if you want to visit the other side, kind of argue make that counter argument, then you will transition back. Like with my thesis, I would have started with saying, only 1/3 of Americans will support the independence movement after the French and Indian Wars. So the majority of Americans were still loyal subjects to Great Britain. And as far as they were concerned, the relationship should stay the same. And then my transition be, although you see a majority of Americans saying loyal to Britain, this war created a major change in the relationship because, and then whatever reasons, just restate it. Your conclusion paragraph probably won't be more than 3 sentences. The only thing you have to do in your conclusion paragraph is restate the thesis. So if your conclusion paragraph is that 1 thesis sentence, I mean, if you're not trying for the complexity point, the conclusion, then just make it your thesis.
So
You can sum up maybe what you think the best argument is out of the 3 you gave in the body, But yeah, you just have to restate the thesis. It's the only thing you have to do. Yeah. All right, I'll put our learning check up. We'll call that good. The learning check asks about what are the 6 points in the rubric. So if you need to get that rubric out, get that rubric out.
What? Nothing? Nothing? No, no one. Who, what, when, where, why? No. I said imagine it was me, but it's not. Just so you know, it's not.
I don't know what you're talking about, but you sound guilty.
I'm
6
not
points.
guilty.
We talked about contextualization. We talked about thesis. There's 4 other points. Evidence, and you can get 2 points for evidence, right? You can get 1 point for evidence, or you can get 2 points for evidence. So this is 2 points total for evidence. And then analysis / reasoning. And that's 2 points as well. And this is what I'm calling the complexity point. The evidence, you say what and why. Analysis and reasoning, you know, go a little bit deeper. You read between the lines. You talk about how things are connected, one event to the next, one situation to the other. All right. Maybe we can do this.
Thank you, baby. Bye bye, bestie Slayer. I hope you have a beautiful day. I love you. Mwah, mwah.
Don't use perfume, not at home. Don't.
All right,
Hello, I'm British.
tomorrow.